Good morning or good afternoon, as the case may be. This is Tony Swafford, and I chair the Adams and Reese COVID-19 Client Task Force, which is made up of subject matter experts across our firm addressing the legal issues that are being raised by the current pandemic. Our goal from the beginning has been to offer up-to-date information in a concise format to assist our clients in dealing with this global crisis. Since we started this outreach several weeks ago, most of our clients now find themselves largely working remotely. Today, we're going to address some issues and challenges raised by our now remote workforce and how you can best protect yourselves from security threats associated with the technologies that we're now all leaning so heavily upon. We'll also touch on privacy concerns that you should consider when working remotely. I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers, Roy Hadley, who practices in our Atlanta office, and Bill Vance, the firm's Chief Technology Officer. Roy has extensive experience advising clients in many facets and aspects of technology as it relates to the law. He works in the areas of cybersecurity and data privacy, and he's advised clients in massive security breaches while helping many other clients best protect themselves from technological threats. Bill brings 30 years of information technology experience, 25 of that in law firms, including several large law firms. Roy's going to address the legal issues that we face with remote work and some privacy concerns, and Bill is going to offer guidance on the technical aspects. With that, Roy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tony. Again, good morning or good afternoon. Many of you that are listening to this are subject to shelter-in-place orders or stay-at-home orders, either from your local or state or federal government. So what we're going to try to do today is to help you understand some of the things that you should be thinking about. Clearly, one size does not fit all, and you should look at this as guidance generally, but your specific circumstances may warrant particular attention. So keep that in mind. But again, we hope these will be helpful to you. Many companies, as Tony said, are turning to video conferencing solutions. You're also seeing that being played out in the educational space. All of those are great tools, but you really need to be cognizant of just thinking about the things that you normally would be, keeping your cyber hygiene up, those sorts of things. Bill, as Tony said, is the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer here at Adams and Reese, and is in charge of really our compliance and our solutions around how we work remotely in some cases, or how all of that kind of ties together. Hopefully this will be helpful to you. Today we're going to talk about, as Tony said, cybersecurity issues that you need to be thinking about, privacy issues, and some compliance issues. First up, we're going to talk about cyber security, cyber hygiene, technology, and Bill is going to kind of lead that discussion. Bill, we often talk about what are the top considerations, and it's always good to have a top 10 list with the realization that sometimes it's more than 10. But top 10 is a great thing. And so, Bill, if you were thinking about from a cybersecurity, a hygiene, a technology standpoint, top 10 list of things people ought to be thinking about as they are working remotely, what would your top 10 be?
Thanks, Roy. This is a hard one because there are so many facets, but we will narrow it down to 10. When you're dealing with working from home, you're relying on people's personal networks, and the burden shifts from the corporation to the individual to think about some of these things. The very first thing that I would say is we need to focus on strong passwords. We got to make sure there's no repeating characters, nothing easy to guess. And this falls right into two-factor authentication. You want to make sure that you're always using two-factor authentication, whether it's your personal accounts, whether it's your bank accounts, whether it is your work accounts. You want to make sure you're always using two-factor authentication. Most corporations are already demanding that you use it. So number one would be strong passwords. Let's not make it something easy to guess, no repeating characters, all that good stuff. Make sure that your home computer is virus-free. So make sure that you spend a few dollars or go out and get a free program out there where you can get an antivirus software to make sure that your computer is clean. If you're connecting your computer to your firm's network, either through a VPN or some other connection, you want to make sure that anything that's on your system is not infecting the system that you're connecting to. So antivirus software is very important. Talk about a VPN. A VPN is a virtual private network, and it lets your computer talk to the computer system that you're connecting to. So imagine you're sitting at home, you connect your VPN. It's the equivalent of having a long wire all the way from your firm to your computer. That allows you to act like you're sitting at your desk, so you get the same sites and services that you do on your desk. With the VPN, the company usually provides it, but if it doesn't, there are other VPN providers out there that you can go and you can connect through VPNs. What's the importance of a VPN? Nobody can sniff the information that's going back and forth between your computer and your firm's computer, or your computer and your bank's computer. So the use of a VPN is very, very important. So number 5 on the list would be make sure that you're using firewalls. There is a firewall built into Microsoft Windows, so you want to make sure that that firewall is turned on. A lot of your cable providers will actually put a firewall on your system, and it's an easy click. It's like, yes, turn on the firewall, no, turn on the firewall, or no, turn off the firewall. So that's an easy one to use. Your home router, very, very important. Most people have 2 parts to their home setup. They have a home router, and your router actually connects to the internet, and then they have some type of Wi-Fi access in their house. Make sure both of these are secure. Very, very important. When the major cable companies and telephone providers send out your home routers, they're sending it out with default passwords that are on labels that are stuck on packages. So it's very easy for those default passwords and those default settings to be the same for you and your neighbor and the next person over and the next person over, particularly if the same cable providers in the same community. So you want to go through and make sure that you change those default passwords, or you put a different password on your admin account. And then the same thing for your Wi-Fi. You want to make sure that you go through and you make sure that your Wi-Fi is secure. Make it something difficult to get on. You don't want your neighbors jumping on your Wi-Fi, particularly when you could use all the bandwidth you need to do video conferencing, your work at home. A lot of people have their children at home now, so there's 3 or 4 people using the Wi-Fi system. You want to make sure that you're utilizing your bandwidth that you're paying for. Number 8 is install your security updates regularly. A lot of people see the little icon or badge, or they have to do their Microsoft updates, updates on their phone, updates on their iPad, their Android tablets, whatever that may be. You'll want to make sure that you're doing your updates. These are normally security updates that are going through helping protect your system. Again, you don't want somebody to breach your local computer so that they can then surf through that to your firm computer. Back up your data. This one's really important. We want to make sure that you're backing up your data so that you can recover at any time. It's not a matter of if your computer's going to fail or if your phone's going to fail or if your tablet's going to fail. It's a matter of when. Just like a car, they go for so long and then it's time to be done with them. So back up your data. There are free offerings through Dropbox, iCloud, Box.net, Google Cloud. So all the major providers out there give anywhere between 2 and 15 gigabytes of free space that you can put this stuff on. You can also use backup programs to put these on flash drives, and you can put your information onto hard drives. This one is super important, which is look out for phishing emails that are coming in. 24 hours after we put a stay in place here at Adams & Reese, we received a nice email typed up that said, hey, wouldn't you like to donate to the Adams & Reese Fund? The problem is this was not put together by Adams & Reese. It actually came in from a Gmail account from some name that we had never seen before saying, please click here to feel free to donate to our cause. A phenomenal thing, donated to the COVID-19 cause, but we want that to be organized by your organization. So make sure when you see something come in asking for money, asking for credentials, asking for information, hover your mouse over the URL link. Make sure that you're looking at the real name, not the display name, but the real email address that's coming in. And then finally, number 10, lock your device. When you walk away from your device, make sure you hit Window L or you lock it on your Macintosh, press the button on your phone, whatever it is, whatever type of system you're using. You do not want your children, you do not want anyone else playing a joke coming in onto your system. By locking your device, you prevent all of that. The last thing you need is, your son or daughter calling somebody else in the company and doing some type of video chat or conference with them. So
those are great, Bill. When you say you mentioned locking your device, often you have screensaver options. Should you enable those to automatically, kind of blank your screen out or lock your device at a certain period of time?
Yes, we recommend 15 to 20 minutes of inactivity that you set your screen to auto lock. It's just a good practice to be in. For phones, we recommend 5 minutes. So if your phone gets set on a table or left in a cab or lost at the airport on an airplane or something like that, all of our firm devices lock after 5 minutes, as far as mobile devices and laptops lock after 15 minutes. So that is a good practice to enable.
Fantastic. And I know we said the top 10 and we're already past that, but talk just a little bit about free Wi-Fi. I know a lot of times people are tempted to go to their local, coffee shop or something like that. Now, with these stay-at-home orders, that may not be as big of an issue, but it's always an issue of using free Wi-Fi for these types of purposes. Should you do that?
Sometimes free Wi-Fi is a necessary evil when you're traveling through the airport or you're in a cafe and you have to get something done. When you're using free Wi-Fi, you always need to have a VPN in place. What that does is basically puts a locked channel between your device and whatever site that you're connecting to, be it your bank, be it your employer, be it any site that you're getting to. What happens with free Wi-Fi sites, and it happens more than you would think, is somebody puts up an access point. You're sending information through their computer, and then from their computer, you're going onto the internet. And what they're doing is they're recording all of your keystrokes. So when you're logging into work, they're recording your password. When you're logging into your bank site, they're recording your name and password because they're actually logging your keystrokes. So it doesn't happen right away, but they collect that from a number of folks in a coffee shop. Later, they go sit down and go, Bank of America, Bill, here's my keystroke information. They just repeat it. They're right into my account. So when you're on a free Wi-Fi system, it is very, very important. Make sure that you're enabling a VPN, whether it's your company VPN, whether it's a private VPN. Free Wi-Fi is very dangerous.
Oh, fantastic. That is a good thing to know. As Bill, one other thing that, and this is not really one other thing, but a bigger question, as the CTO at Adams and Reese, you're in charge of kind of the technology here. What are some of the other things that business owners and employers should be thinking about with respect to now most of their workforce working from home? I know for you, help desk and help desk hours, maybe had to be extended. So are there other things that people should be thinking about as most of their workforce or a significant portion now is working remotely?
Yeah, there's a number of things that you should be working on. The first thing that we did here at Adams and Reese was to make sure that everybody had the proper connectivity to the system. We had a number of individuals, like our attorneys, who have laptops, they're mobile, they're used to working mobile all the time, they have VPN, they have Citrix, they have screen sharing capabilities. They have all of those capabilities. We had a number of staff members who don't work remotely, so we wanted to make sure that we issued them the proper equipment, or we gave them Citrix access off their home computers. And Citrix is a program that basically logs into one of our file servers, emulates the screen that you have on your desk with all of the firm programs that you have available to you at your desk. So somebody can actually use their computer at home, their home computer. They open a screen that looks just like the screen that they have on their desk at work, and they're able to work through a remote connection that is secure through a VPN and through other technologies. So we wanted to make sure that everybody had a way to get in to do their job. So that was very important. So step one was getting everyone connected. We went through and we put two-factor authentication on every single person's device. So if you have a phone that's a smartphone, we issued you a two-factor authentication. Very first thing is you cannot enter the Adams and Reese network without being on two-factor authentication. Regardless of the program, regardless of the connection type, always need two-factor authentication. Then you could either come in through VPN or you can come in through Citrix. So that was very important to make sure that everybody had their equipment. But that's just phase one. Phase one is getting everybody connected, and we're through phase one, no problem at all. Phase two is making sure that now that the employees that are working at home are actually as productive as possible. So some of the things that you mentioned are, we have to make sure that we staff up our help desk hours. So we're opening our help desk an hour early, we're closing it an hour later, and we actually have more individuals on evening support to make sure that those people can get connected, or anytime somebody has a connection issue, that they're able to get help immediately. So that one is very important. Security. We are making sure that the security that we have in place is as good or as exceeds the standards that we have on a normal basis. So understanding who's connecting to the network, checking connections. When we get a series of attempts of people trying to connect to the network and they drop, we call them back. Are you having a problem? Is this really you? Is this something that we should shut down? You have to watch for all kinds of fraud now. People are looking for holes in your security. People are looking at ways to access your network. Just like they're phishing, sending employees emails, they're phishing on the system trying to get in to understand how they can get into your system. So we're looking at making sure that we're really watching our security protocols. Some other things that we're looking at is you've got to look at the access of how many system resources are being used. On a normal basis, we're at X on our Citrix. We went to X times 10 on our Citrix access. So we needed to make sure that we increased those resources. We had to make sure we turned up more VPN licenses. We had to make sure that we had remote connectivity on our phone systems enabled so that everybody could forward their phones to their cell phones. So just things that we're looking at. We're also making sure that our privacy is put in place of making sure that nobody has access to systems that they didn't have access to before. Confidential files are still confidential. Accounting matters are still subject to only access by accounting. So making sure that all of those things are in place has been some of the things that Adams and Reese is working on. The final thing we're doing is going back and touching base with all of the employees to make sure that we can help them be as productive as possible. That may mean somebody needs two screens. If somebody is one of the folks in our accounting department, they normally use two screens where they can see information on one screen and then double check it with the information on the other screen. So let's do what we can to get them the proper equipment. It may be that somebody's unfamiliar with the trackpad on a laptop, so it's as simple as getting them a mouse to up their productivity. So really going back and putting the programs in place or the pieces of hardware in place that are really minuscule to the overall picture to make sure that long-term productivity is in place for our employees.
Fantastic, Bill. Those are just great points that I think a lot of people may not think about as you're working from home because, again, security, but also productivity are key factors in dealing with this thing long term. One of the things that people mention all the time when working remotely are going to be those video conferencing software solutions like Team and Zoom or Zoom and Teams and others that are out there. I often get questions around what should we be thinking about when we do that? Things like, passwords. Should we enable the password feature? Most of these software programs do have password capability, and it's always a good practice to enable that because that will allow you to control who's on the call. Speaking of who's on the call, it's always a good point to authenticate who's actually on the call. Look at the video boxes. Do you recognize the person? Do you recognize the number? If you don't, inquire about it before the call starts. Make sure you know who's on the call. And one of the other big questions we often get, or a point that people aren't really aware of is that most of these software platforms have recording features, and those recording features allow the calls to be recorded. That said, we here at Adams and Reese are really cognizant of whether something is recorded or not. And I think everybody that is listening to this, especially in the educational, setting, should be cognizant of it, because you're going to get into issues if you don't. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the call. But Bill, are there other things that people should be thinking about when it comes to using these video conferencing solutions?
Absolutely. I could not agree more or stress more. Both Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Teams, WebEx regular system, they all have things that allow for random passwords and access codes to be generated per meeting. So I do not recommend the same presenter use the same code. If you were on a call at 9 o'clock and then you had a back-to-back call at 10 o'clock, your 9 o'clock folks could run late, your 10 o'clock folks could dial in early, and there could be a conflict there. So make sure that you're using unique passcodes for each meeting. Make sure that you're using access codes unique to each meeting. Very, very important. Sharing your desktop. A lot of these programs allow your desktop to be shared. Be careful of what you're sharing, what's on your desktop. We all think it's funny to say, hey, sometimes that we see somebody's screensaver, the kids going fishing or whatever, and funny to see other people's screensavers on there. But you don't realize all the things that you have up on the screen. You may have another client matter information in an email. Just the fact that, there's an email that's present, perhaps just the title could be something that is giving away too much information. If I was sharing my screen and it said Tom Brady went to Tampa 3 weeks ago, you'd have been like, what? That type of thing. You want to make sure that all of that information is behind. So close the windows that you're not using. Make sure that the information you have on your screen is pertinent to that meeting and private. So we want to make sure that that's there. Couldn't agree more with the recordings. Here at Adams and Reese, special permission to record a meeting. All the recording of meetings is turned off by default. Never a good idea unless it's something that absolutely needs recorded. We turn that on. We talked about passwords. Make sure that each meeting has a password. Make sure you know that who each person is on that. And finally, when you're done with a meeting, make sure that you click and turn off. We've had individuals in the past who have had to get up for whatever reason, walk away from the meeting and take a phone call to just have that session be open for an extended period of time when the meeting should have just come to a close. So if you're hosting a meeting, make sure that you actually hit end meeting. And particularly if you're the host of a meeting, make sure you understand who all of the individuals are on there. Sometimes it goes by screen name, sometimes it goes by telephone number, sometimes it goes by the real name they type in. So make sure that you recognize each of the individuals on the call to understand that it is the person that you believe is on the call.
Fantastic, Bill. Thank you. I know that with Zoom and Teams and some of these other programs, there are a lot of other things that you should think about that are very specific to the program, so we won't go into them there. But I think the bottom line is you have to be careful and cognizant of what you're doing and keep your guard up in these types of situations, just like you would in any other situation. Kind of speaking of keeping your guard up, one thing that I want to make sure that everybody listening here thinks about, especially when you're utilizing these programs, is actually read the privacy policy and read the terms of use for these programs. A lot of them will say, they have the right to do certain things with your information, and you need to understand that before you get going. Things like sharing your information across their sister companies, third-party cookies. If you are recording, do they have rights to that recording? Can they monitor that recording? All of those sorts of things you need to be thinking about, especially if you're in the educational setting or some other highly regulated industry. So, for example, in the education setting, FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, comes into play. FERPA protects students' educational records. And you need to understand when you are using these programs how that interacts with FERPA. We mentioned COPA, the Children Online Privacy Protection Act, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. But COPA deals with kids under 13. So if you're in an educational setting and you're using these programs for primary age kids, you need to be cognizant of COPA and how that may relate to you. The California Consumer Privacy Act has opt-out. You need to understand what that means vis-a-vis your video conferencing and your online capabilities. And, again, speaking of recordings, you need to understand that feature, but you also need to understand it from a compliance standpoint. I'll mention that some states require consent from all parties to record, some do not. So you need to understand where you are, where the reach of your conferencing is, and those types of compliance issues. One other thing I do want to mention when we talk about compliance that people often don't think about, when your employees are working remotely, you need to think about wage and hour laws and how you're monitoring how much they work, when they start, their lunch breaks, those sorts of things. So you need to treat those employees at home just like you would in the office and in terms of compliance. And I will mention also for our clients and people listening to this that are in the healthcare setting, HIPAA, has a lot to do with how you interact vis-a-vis your patients online. I know that some of the HIPAA rules have been relaxed during this COVID crisis, but you still need to understand what you're doing and how that relates to HIPAA. Some platforms were already HIPAA compliant, some were not. Those are the kinds of things that you need to understand. Again, one size does not fit all, and a lot of the information that Bill shared today that I have shared also may be pertinent to your particular situation, but you really do need to look at your individual situation as always and make sure you're getting the specific guidance and counsel that you need. With that, we hope that this has been helpful.
Thanks, Roy and Bill, and thank you to our participants. If you have any questions related to this webinar, please reach out to Roy Hadley. And if you have other areas of concern related to COVID-19, reach out to me, and I'll put you in touch with the appropriate lawyer based on subject matter. We will continue to update our clients as things unfold during this crisis. Thanks again for participating, and have a great day.